Welcome to Rauta's opinion videos. Today I will talk a little bit about my ways of reacting to metal lyrics and why the age and time has changed how I feel about it. Now there's two different lines here basically, and I'm trying to make it really clear because writing lyrics is one thing and reading other people's lyrics are the other thing. However, there are similarities with these two, and one fact remains. When I'm getting older, I'm getting more picky. I'm getting pickier by every year, I guess, and well, let's put it this way, it doesn't get any easier reading metal lyrics, especially when I'm getting older. Now, when I was younger, like any kid, being influenced by music and lyrics, thoughts of any given artist, rock or otherwise, well, it wasn't that hard. I mean, you know, basically, rock stars or metalheads, doesn't really matter what the genre is. Well, you kind of look them, up and you're like feeling like, hey, these guys, gals, whatever, they have so much important stuff to say. They have strong opinions, they have more life experience, they have gone through a lot of things which I have not. So obviously, like any kid, I kind of automatically had a sort of respect to these people, and thinking that whatever they might be writing on the songs, it's probably something important, even when those lyrics were not that much, making sense. They kind of had their point. That is, they were making sense in a weird way, or at least you were kind of living in this illusion. You were kind of giving, or turning a blind eye to the fact that, well, not most lyrics are not that great in the first place. So when you started to get older and kind of expanding one's vocabulary, so those lyrics started to make more sense. At that point, and I'm roughly talking about, being late teens, like 18, 19, maybe 20s, those lyrics started to make more sense. You started to understand more metaphors, so even those lyrics that at first felt like complicated and all that stuff started to make more sense. Weird, lines or lines that felt weird when you were young start to make more sense, and you kind of start to develop the kind of idea for more kind of a sense of literature. I'm talking about writing more complicated, more complex stuff in the first place. So you move on to a new, different level. Also, you have more experience than you were when you were a small kid or even like early teen. Suddenly you have so much more experience on life. Maybe not adult life, but at least to some extent that as well. That might be sex, alcohol, drugs, relationships, I mean like romantic sense and all that stuff. So you're on a new level now, and these influences have changed so much since you were a kid. By the time many people had their own bands, like I had my own band, the first one when I was like 18 or 19, probably 19. So the first lyrics which I wrote wasn't exactly for my own band, but for a friend's band who later on I became a band members with. But those lyrics, I don't have them anymore, but I probably would like facepalm if I would to read them. Not only because my English was, worse, but also because probably those lyrics wouldn't make much of a sense. Probably I was using more cool words rather than making any sense. And I think that's pretty much the thing with other bands. So there's kind of like these different phases. And when I was like turning, I don't know, 30 or something, I started to become more picky. Now I wasn't reading those lyrics anymore as such as like life tips or, ways to view life, philosophy, religions, death, murder, violence, whatever in general. So I started to kind of become more kind of reserved when it comes to reading those lyrics and agreeing with them. Even the ones you might be shouting at concerts and whatnot, you might end up like just shutting up your mouth because you don't relate so much anymore. There's a huge step from being like 10 to like say 15 and then 20 and then suddenly 30, that basically you need more years to reach the next level, basically like the experience system in so many games. Don't get confused, but that it is how it is. And later on you kind of become this statue of stone. You kind of move more slowly, you evolve more slowly, and by these elements you also start become more this made of stone, and suddenly your mind starts to kind of slow down in the sense of adapting new ideas. We all know these from various sources of life, various fields in life. So also the level of influence kind of changed with life. Now, writing one's own lyrics basically changes the same way. At least it has done for me. For example, my own band, the only one which is still active, when I did lyrics just like in 2016, it was way different than say 2002, because obviously things have changed in my personal life. My own views have changed at least a little bit. They have been more kind of refined, if you will. Also, some opinions might have totally changed, or at least become a little bit different. So the same way when I read other people's lyrics, different bands and whatnot, I find harder and harder to relate to those lyrics, no matter how good the music is. And especially black metal, which has been so many years one of my most preferred genre, maybe even more than others, has become such a nuisance in the sense that I can really rarely actually relate so many lyrics. Why, you might ask? Well, first of all, they are way too often kind of a childish. I mean, it was really so much easier to relate to those kind of stuff when you were like 18. But being like 40, it's totally different. It's really hard to see all this stuff. They were also really spiritual, which I am basically not. I'm way too much an atheist or sort of an agnostic, a scientific person. So when it comes to spiritual things, and which people often underline when they are spiritual themselves, being Satanist or Christian doesn't really matter. The thing is, they find it's too personal. So when they're personal and then they have hard time explaining that, and I've faced in situations when I wanted to, like interview certain black metal band. So when they have hard time explaining that in an interview, it's a really much harder with lyrics. So if people are unable to explain their views of spirituality and whatnot on lyrics, which might be covered in various levels of metaphors and whatnot, it becomes hugely harder to understand those people if they are not able to or willing to explain them in an interview. So it gets more complicated, and thus I find it even more harder to relate to these topics for obvious reasons. Now, when it comes to more, say, natural or more normal, everyday lyrics, banal, if you will, say death metal and violence, well, they're kind of hard as well, because sometimes they're like stupid crime stories of murder or for rape or abuse and whatnot. So that is not so much relatable either. I mean, they are kind of stories, horror stories or whatnot, which can be seen and understood pretty well, but it's not like you're like 40, oh yeah, I really like the story where the serial killer goes and stabs some people and then eats their brain. It's like, why bother? I mean, these guys are mostly not writers. They're not authors. They are not poets. They're just guys creating brutal music and then writing some lyrics to, kind of fill the gaps where the vocals are needed. So Nowadays, I rarely read lyrics, and I know this might become a shock to some people. How can you be a male review or interview guy or whatever, because if you don't read lyrics? Well, easily. I mean, I still read interviews, I still get to know, at least on some levels, what these bands are all about. I may be, browsing with my eyes, the whole stuff, listen to the music, create the atmosphere, check out album covers, because there's so much more than just lyrics that actually tells you about the band. You all should know about this. I don't know how aware you are about this, but bands exist in so many levels. It's beyond just notes and chords, beyond just lyrics, vocals, beyond just, album covers, beyond symbols used, statements mentioned on the covers, words said or left without words in interviews, and so forth. It's the combination, the sum of it all, and maybe then even more. Because obviously some people have, well, most people I guess, have life beyond the band. In a band you see like this much, and the person could be this big, maybe even more. So reading lyrics is not exactly my key to enjoyment, happiness, and understanding in so many bands. I mean, there's so many fantastic black metal bands. In so many ways, I can get nice, feeling when I'm reading that, interview or listening to the music, checking out pictures and whatnot. And when I read the lyrics, I'm like, why am I doing this? Why am I just, ruining the atmosphere? So it is a kind of a tricky thing. Am I doing myself a favor by reading them and getting the truth? Or am I just, ruining the feeling and getting the CD like out of there? It's a tricky thing. And with death metal, it doesn't really get better. So if I have to, go for the lyrics I'm, want to get related to and getting like on the same page, same level, if you will, it's rarely metal. Well, some thrash metal maybe, but I mean, it's not like thrash metal is genius and others are not. So creating lyrics or reading them, it's kind of a mind-boggling and sometimes ruining the whole thing. Sometimes it might be, making the whole album and the band better, but not too often. So reading lyrics can be a curse or it can be a blessing. Rarely both at the same time. So this is why I do not read lyrics that often, and I don't know. Maybe I should, maybe I don't. What are your thoughts? Do you read the lyrics and how much lyrics mean to you? Reply and put them on the comment box below and I'll get back to you. Thank you for watching. See you soon. Cheers.